This is our second video in our series from the CAT Computer Applications Technology Study Opportunities Prac Exam from November 2020 for grade 11. And thank you to Study Opportunities for letting us use this paper for our demonstration. And we're going to jump through to question 2, which is the Excel question. So we're dealing with a spreadsheet about results for surveys of e-learning in schools, and I've opened up the survey spreadsheet. It's over here, and we must work in the chart worksheet. Here's a little tip: when you're working with Excel, make sure that you're working in the right worksheet. So if I come down there, you can see that I am currently in the chart worksheet, and we must change the chart so that it appears as follows. So there we can see a chart by following the instructions on the next page. Please note the screenshot is also included on the worksheet to show you what it must look like. Okay, so let's go do the following. We must add the text platform to the vertical axis. There you can see platform. So if I come here, if I click on this one is my actual chart. This is just an image. So we want a platform on the side. So we're going to add an axis title, and we want it to be for the vertical axis, which is this up and down one. So we want a vertical axis, and we want to change that text to platform. So there we can see it's the side. That's great. Then they want me to remove the grid lines. So let's go. We're going to remove the grid lines. So I'm going to click on those grid lines and right click and see if there's options there for that. We want to remove them, format the grid lines, and we want no lines. So I'm going to say no lines. There's no grid lines. And then they want me to fill the chart area with a solid white color. So if I click on the chart area, you see it's got like some sort of picture. I'm going to right click on it to see if they can format the chart area. There we go. And we're going to format it to be a fill. And we want a solid white color. So let's go select white. Okay, so we can already see we're making some good progress. And then we want to add data labels in the position shown. So you can see there are data labels, but they are on the inside of the data. So when I click on this plus sign, we want data labels. So I'm going to select data labels, and we want them on the inside end. So you can see the different options. So yes, that one looks like what we want, inside end, so that it's on the inside on the end. So if I do that, there we go. I think those are all the things that we need to do. Now it looks exactly the same. There we go. So that's that question done. Then 2.2, insert a formula in D18 to calculate the total amount of data used in the month by all the schools in terabytes. So let's go to D18. There it is. And we want the total amount of data used by all the schools. And it tells us the information you'll need is in column H in the survey worksheet. So if we come over here in the survey worksheet, we're going to come here. We want there we go. So there's all the data. So that's all the values in column H. So we want to sum all those. So if I come here to chart, we want to add up all that data. So I'm going to say equals sum, open bracket. And now I'm going to click on survey and then click on the top of the H column for the first bit of data there and just drag down to the bottom, all the way to the bottom. There we go. And I'm not going to click anywhere else, because if I do click anywhere else, it's going to change survey to chart, and that's not what I want to do. I'll just close the bracket now while we are doing that, and see if there's anything else that they want me to do. And there are 1024 gigabytes in a terabyte. Now the data that I'm using now, you'll notice, is actually in gigabytes, that formula. So that's going to add up all the gigabytes. So how do I get terabytes? If that's how many gigabytes there are in a terabyte, we need to divide our answer by 1024 to get it into terabytes. So I'm going to take that answer and then put a divide by 1024, and that should convert it to terabytes. So if I press enter, it says that we are going to use 7.6 terabytes of data is the total data used in a month by all the schools. Okay, so look at that formula. We summed all the values and we divided by 1024. So let's move on to 2.3.1. We're now on the survey worksheet, so make sure that you are on the survey worksheet. And then the cells A2 and B2 must be done according to the following instructions. So they give me a bit of some instructions. So let's first wrap the text in A2. In other words, we must Kendrick Lamar it, because we're going to wrap it. Yo, yo, yo. So I'm going to click on A2 and we're going to wrap it. There is the Kendrick Lamar button, wrap text. So we're going to go yo, 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 wrap it. There we go. So there it's wrapped. Wrap just means if it doesn't fit, it just puts it on a new line. That's basically what wrap text means. And then we need to center align the text in the merge field vertically. So when we click on center, it's already centered there, but that's the vertical alignment that we're talking. So we can click on that. Another option would be just to right click on it, go to format cells, and then you come here to alignment and you can change these settings as well. That's another option available to you. And then they want me to display a border between the merged cell A2 and B2. So there must be a border between the two. So when I come over here, there should be, if I click away, you see there's no real border. So if I come over there, we want a border to, if I clicked on this cell, the border on the right-hand side. So I'm going to select a border on the right. So if I click on border, right border, boom, and you can see there they've added the border. And then we want to change the orientation of the text in the merged cell B2 so that it looks like that, capped, so it's from the bottom to the top. So we click on this one and we want to change its orientation. So there are options over here of how we want it to be. We can format the cell alignment over here. I want the text to go like, if I click like that, so from reading upwards. So if I do that 90 degrees, there you can see capped is like that. So I think that's all the marks for that one. I think it looks exactly like how we want it to look. There we go. And let's move on. 2.3.2, ensure that any cells in column H that are 500 or more, so that includes 500, are displayed in a red font color automatically. Red font means the text must be red. So we're looking at column H. So all of the gigabytes that we just looked at earlier, I'm going to select all of this text over here, and we're changing what it looks like. In other words, we're not changing what the values are, but just changing what the values look like. In other words, we're changing its formatting based on a condition. So we're going to come here to conditional formatting, and we're going to make a new rule. And I don't want a 2-color scale on cells. Yeah, we go where the cell's value is. And now remember, they said 500 or more, which means we want it to be greater than or equal to 500. And then we want the font to be red. So I'm going to format it. So if it's greater than or equal to 500, change the font to red font. So red font text. So click OK, click OK. And you'll see all the numbers that are 500 or more are now in red. Now 2.4, insert a function in R4 that will display the text high if the value in H4 is 500 and more. If the value is less than 500, nothing must be displayed. It must be blank or empty. So there are two possibilities there, which means that is a if statement. So let's go to R4. So R4 is that block over there. So if this block is 500 or more, so we're going to put in the if statement equals if. Now my logical test, my question is if H4, remember this block is only referring to that block. It's not referring to all of them, just this one. If H4 is greater than equal to 500, greater than equal to that, if that question is true, what do we want it to be? True, it must say the text high. So then I'm going to put a comma for the next. So this is where we put the value if it's true. And in double quotes, I'm going to type the text high because we want to display as it is. Now, put a comma. Now, what must we do if it's false? It says we must display nothing. It must be blank or empty, which means we must put the null string, which is a double quote, double quote. That's like the nothing string. And then I close my bracket. So if it's 500 or more, that is high. But if I had to copy this down, do you agree that should be high, that should be high? So if I copy it down, all of these should be nothing, and all of the ones that were high should change to high. So there we know that it is actually working because now these ones are based on a formula. Okay, so that's easy 4 marks. Indications of which learning platforms are used by schools are stored in columns C to J. So columns C to J, that tells you which platforms are being used. A Y in the cell means that the platform is used by the school. The number of schools surveyed is stored in L2. If I come over there, L2, that's how many schools were surveyed. Insert a function in L4 to calculate the percentage of schools that use Google Classroom. So in L4 over here, the percentage of schools that use Google Classroom. Well, we want to know how many of them use Google divided by how many schools there are in total. So we're first going to count how many Google schools there are. So I'm going to say equals count. Now, count only counts numbers. Now, if I want to count these, do you agree those are not numbers? So I can't use count. I have to use count A because count counts all the cells that are not blank. So I open bracket and we want to count all of the Google options, so all of the ones in E all the way to the bottom. So there we go. So count all the ones in column E, close bracket. And we're going to divide that by how many schools there are in total, which is this block over there. Now, there are 2 ways that we can make it a percentage. If I press enter, do you see it says 0? Now, I can either format it as a percentage, and you can see it's 25%. That's one way. And the other way, whenever you're dealing with percentages, if you're dividing by L2, if you're not making it a percentage, then you must multiply it by 100. If you think about, like, for example, your test, if you get 50 out of 75, you say 50 divided by 75, and if you just do that, you don't get 0.66. You go that times it by 100, and then you know that it's actually 66% for the test. But just remember, you must do one or the other. You can't multiply by 100 and do the percentage. Otherwise, it's going to make it like a really big number, which is not what we want. So you must either do the percentage sign or multiply by 100 to make it a percentage. 2.6. Internet connection types, fiber, ADSL, 4G of the different schools are stored in column A. You can see over here, column A, we can see that. The hash symbol in the column means that the school does not have any of these three connection types. So if I look at it, so those hashes mean they don't have any of them. Insert a function in L2 to determine the number of schools that have one of the three types, which in other words, they are not, it's not going to be a hash. So in L7, determine the number of schools that have one of the three types. In other words, they've got one of them. We're counting the ones that have one of the connections. So they either have a fiber or ADSL or 4G. So we're basically counting the ones that are not the hash. So we don't mind any of the options as long as it's not a hash. So I'm going to say equals count if, because we're counting based on a condition. Where are we finding the values to count? We're counting them in the A column, which is from there to there, all the way to the bottom. And we want all the values that are got a fiber or ADSL. You could do three countifs, like countif the fibers, countif the ADSLs, countif the 4Gs. That could work, but this way is a lot quicker. Count the A4 to A62, comma, what's our criteria? We want to find those that are not hashes. In other words, not equal to. What is not equal to? Shine bright like a diamond. It's the diamond symbol like that. So it's less than, greater than symbol, not equal to hash. That's what you want it to be. Remember, your condition must be in double quotes. So we're going to put double quotes in around here and then close the bracket. So search countif A4 to A62 for all those that are not equal to a hash symbol. So let's see what that does. And it says that there are 36 that do not have any of the three connections. And it makes sense that it's 3 marks, because if you look there, it's 1 mark for the countif, 1 mark for the range, 1 mark for the criteria. 2.7, a function L11. So we're going to come here to L11 over there. Correctly determines the number of schools that use fiber for their interconnection. Change the function in L11 to ensure that the user can copy this function to M11 and N11 without making any changes to determine the number of schools that use ADSL and 4G. Copy the function in cell so that we can actually see that it works. So if I had to see there, count all the values in the correct cells that are fiber. But if I copy this across, you see it gives me 0, but I know there are some ADSLs and 4G. So let's look at what it makes. First of all, we don't want to always refer to fiber. This one must refer to ADSL, and this one over here must refer to 4G. In other words, we're referring to what's in that block. So with this fiber one, I'm actually not referring to it equaling fiber, but I'm referring to it equaling the value in this block. Because if I do that, it gives me the same answer, but if I copy it across, then that L10 is going to become an M10 and then an N10, so it's going to refer to the right value. The other issue is, if you notice here, you see it goes A4 to A62, but then when I move across, it then goes to B4 and B62, which is not what I want, because there's nothing in B462 for ADSL. We want it to stay with the A4 to A62. So when I do that, I'm actually going to put $ around the A4 and A62. So I click on the A4, press F4, and there it puts $ around it. And if I click on A63, $ by pressing F4 again. And by doing that, you see our formula hasn't changed, but now when I copy it across, we get in values, because now it keeps that range A4 to A62, but when I move it across, the L10 then changed to an M10, and then it changes to an N10 over here, and then we copied it across. So there we go. Those are the correct answers. 2.8, insert a large function, so they tell me which one, in L15 to calculate the second highest amount of data used by our school in a month. Use the function to round the result to a whole number without decimal places. Okay, so let's come over here to second highest. We want in L15 the second highest amount of data. So we're going to say equals large, and we're looking at the data for all the gigabytes. So I select all the data and I press comma, and we want the second highest. So we're going to put a 2 there and close bracket. So look large for all that data for the second value. Press enter. So we can see that that number is between the two. But they also said that we want to round the result to a whole number without decimal. So whenever I've got a formula that I'm going to round, I put in front of the equal to sign, I type the words round open bracket, and at the end I go comma and how many decimal places. Well, in this case it's a whole number, so it's 0 decimal places, close bracket, and there we go. So whenever I first do my main formula, and then I go in front of the equal to sign, round open bracket, and at the end comma how many decimal places. And this works the same for round up and round down. 9.2, insert a SUMIF function in L18. So let's go to L18. There's L18, a SUMIF function. Calculate the total amount of data used by schools with a fiber connection. So we want to total all these, but only if they've got fiber. So let's go equals SUMIF. Open bracket. We first want to see, where do we look first? We first look here first. If we find fiber, then we move across to the H column to add the value there. So we first look in the A column. So that's my first range. So it's exactly like a COUNTIF basically. Select your range of data. So we say comma equal to the word fiber. So I can just type in the word fiber. But remember, it must be in double quotes. And it is fiber that we determine. Yes, SUMIF of fiber connections. Look in the A4 to A62 for the text fiber. So you type it in just like it is. Then we're going to put another comma. Now what must we sum if that value in there is fiber? Then we must sum the values in H. So I'm going to start from H all the way down. There you go, all the way to the bottom. And there we go. So it goes from A4 to A62. So therefore the H must go from 4 to 62. It must be the same number of values. And there you can see it does. If we are looking in the blue column for the word fiber, then we then move across to the red column to add that value, and so on and so on. So let's press enter. And there we go. That's the total amount of data used by schools with a fiber connection. 2.10. The data shows that if a school uses only one platform, then that platform is WhatsApp. Insert a function in L22 to determine the number of schools that use only WhatsApp as a platform. Use the fact that the number of platforms used by each school have already been determined and stored in P. So in here we want to determine the schools that only use WhatsApp. And here you can see the P column, they've using a value to tell me how many yeses there are. So there's 1, there's 2. In this case, there's only 1. And they basically are saying if this is a 1, then we know that it's a WhatsApp. That's basically what they're trying to say. So we are trying to count all the ones in this column. So I'm saying equals COUNTIF, open bracket, and we're going to select all of these values over here. And we are looking for a 1. But remember, COUNTIF, we must put our values in a double quote, 1. Close double quote. So we're looking for all the ones in this P column over here, and we press enter. There we go. It found 17 schools that use just WhatsApp, because we assuming, they say you can use the fact that if there's only one platform, it can only be WhatsApp. So there we go. So that's that question. So let's go. Now we must work in the connection types worksheet. So we're going to move to connection types over there, and let's see what they want us to do. 2.11. Only 3 questions to go. Let's go. 2.11. Ensure that row 1 will always remain visible if the user scrolls down through the rest of the worksheet. So if I scroll down, oh, we lost the row 1. It's gone. So row 1 must always be at the top, be visible if we scroll down. So I'm going to click on the first row, and we're going to come here to view, and we want to freeze panes, and I want to freeze the top row. So I actually didn't even need to select the first one, because I just freeze the top row. So now that it's frozen, if I scroll down, do you see how that always stays at the top? So there we go. That one's done. 1 mark. And then 2.12, ensure that if the worksheet is printed, that's different, that the column headings in row 1 will repeat on each printed page, and the output will be centered horizontally on the page. So the first row must be printed at the top of each page. So I'm going to show you a little thing about this. If I come here to File and Print, it fits on one page, so it's not going to really be a hassle, but we basically want to change the page setup. And we come here to margins, and there you can see we want to center the page. If you remember correctly, we want to center the page horizontally. So I'm going to select horizontally, so it's centered there. But if I come here to the sheet, you'll notice that I can't actually change the rows to repeat at the top, and that's what I want, to make sure that that top row always appears at the top. So we got the horizontal alignment done correctly, but let's go back. How do I change that? Well, we want to get back to that same dialog, and that's under page layout. And here's the page setup. If I click on that dialog pop up, there you can see we've got the exact same options. We've got the option to make it horizontally centered, which we've got. But if I come here to sheet, which rows do we want to repeat at the top? Well, we want the first row. So I'm going to click on that arrow there, boom. And we want just the first row, please. So if we have multiple pages to be printed, that will always be at the top of each page. That's basically what's happening. And we click OK. And there we go. That's how you do it. And then the last question, let's use a subtotal function to determine the total number of learners that use each internet connection type. So if we come here, we want to use a subtotal function. I'm going to select all of the data, and we come here to data, and there you can see the subtotal function. So if I click on subtotal, it asks me what we want to subtotal according to. So we want it on internet connection type. That is correct, but they want us to determine the total number of learners that use each internet connection. So we want to know this. Basically, we want to add up the learners. So we actually want to sum the number of learners. So not the school, but the number of learners. So we want it based on the internet connection type, but we want to sum the learners and click OK. And there we can see the totals. We can see that 4G is 4,800, ADSL is 7,896, and fiber is in the 11,000 and so on. There we go. And that's how you use a subtotal function. So let's save. And I think we've done all the Excel questions. There we go. We're done. Let's move on to question 3, which is the database question. Don't forget that the video description contains links to the data files as well as to the other questions to help you with them. Click on that like button, subscribe, share us with your friends, and follow us on TikTok at Mr. Long Education. And remember, don't do it the long way, do it the Mr. Long way.